La pandemia aceleró la transformación digital con todas sus ventajas y oportunidades, y con ella también se magnificaron los riesgos del mundo digital. Nunca como ahora, el fraude y la ciberseguridad deben ser temas prioritarios de cualquier administrador de riesgos. Es un gusto presentar la conferencia magistral Scam Me If You Can. Frank Abagnale es una de las autoridades mundiales en materia de falsificación, malversación y documentos seguros. Durante más de 40 años ha asesorado y trabajado con cientos de instituciones financieras, empresas y el FBI. Su pasado como uno de los estafadores más conocidos del mundo inspiró el hit de Hollywood Atrápame si puedes, protagonizado por Leonardo DiCaprio. We welcome Frank to the Risk Management and Trading Conference 2021.
Yourself and protect your family as well. I've been doing these seminars for the past 45 years. I've conducted more than 3,000 seminars around the world. I've always done that with the same simple philosophy, and that's prevention, verification, and education. Prevention, because once you lose your money, you will never get your money back. We already have more than $110 billion in the United States outstanding in court-ordered restitution to victims. 91% of that will never be collected. They may arrest the person, they may send them to jail, but you most likely probably never get your money back. So it is much better to be proactive, not reactive, and prevent the crime. If we're not doing anything about crime, we're just encouraging more crime. No matter what technology you have, if you are not training people well, you are only creating future problems. I remind people all the time that verification, today everything can be replicated, duplicated, counterfeited, deep fake. If you're going to part with your money or you're going to part with information, you need to absolutely be sure who is on the other end of that device, whether it be a phone, an email, a text message. Today, everything has to be verified. And finally, education. Education is the most powerful tool to fighting crime. Whether I'm training FBI agents at the FBI Academy, which I've done for almost 4 decades, or whether I'm teaching bankers or corporations, education is a powerful tool. If I can show you your risk, then you are smart enough to do the things necessary to protect yourself from falling victim to some of those scams. And of course, if we follow the money, which we always like to do, especially when it involves foreign actors and large sums of money, billions of dollars, we always have to ask the question, where does that money go? Where does that money end up? It's kind of a boomerang. It comes back into our society, but unfortunately in the forms of narcotics, weapons, terrorism, human trafficking. So everything we do, even if it's a small thing that prevents crime, goes a long way to keeping that from harming other people. Identity theft. I've written 3 books on the subject. I started writing about identity theft back in the late 1980s when no one was talking about it. It has always been a crime, but very few people committed that crime. After my 3rd book on identity theft, most things have not changed. In the United States, there's a victim every 2 seconds who has their identity stolen. Actually, in the year 2018, 3.6 billion identity records were compromised. More than 14 billion identity records are available on the online through the dark web. You know, if we go back to 2004, we look at breaches when they started becoming something that everyone heard about. We started to look at the size of those companies and how big they were and how much information was being stolen and how much data was being taken. Then when we go on from there to the next sector of time, we see even bigger breaches, bigger companies, and more data. To where it brings us today to the breaches of Marriott hotels, Facebook, Capital One Bank, and every day a new breach occurs. As a matter of fact, during the pandemic of 2021, there were more breaches than all the breaches put together since 2015. Now, I make my home in Charleston, South Carolina, About 4 years ago, someone hacked into our state tax revenue office and stole 3.8 million tax returns of the citizens of South Carolina, including myself. That means they had my Social Security number, your wife's Social Security number. If you had children and listed them as dependents, they had their Social Security number, they had your earnings. When the incident occurred, the state tax revenue office said, we didn't do anything wrong. I said that would be absolutely, literally impossible. Every breach occurs because somebody in that company did something they weren't supposed to do, or somebody in that company failed to do something they were supposed to do. Hackers do not cause breaches. People do. All hackers do is look for opportunities, weak spots, open doors, and there's millions of them. If we make it easy for someone to steal from us, unfortunately, someone will. And in many cases, we make it very, very easy. Our governor at the time ordered that every citizen in the state be provided with 1 year of credit monitoring service, and the state would pick up the tab. I wrote the governor and told her that would be a waste of time and a waste of the taxpayers' money, because people who steal mass data warehouse that data typically for 3 to 4 years before they ever bring it out to the marketplace. So 1 year of credit monitoring, 2 years of credit monitoring, 3 years of credit monitoring are not going to help you, as they will hold that data typically 3 to 4 years. And we've seen that now in South Carolina, with 4 years later, some of that information now being exposed and misused belonging to the citizens of this state. I remind people all the time that data is money. Each piece of data has a value assigned to it. And of course, there's billions and billions of pieces of information and data out there. And when you look at that and you start to add up that money, we're talking trillions of dollars in illegal information and legal activity that can be done with that data. 240 billion computer hacks, attempted hacks, every 24 hours around the world. That's more than the number of tweets Twitter processes in an entire year. The World Forum said back in 2019 that in 2020, cybercrime would cost the global economy $2.9 million every minute. And in 2020, that did happen, and some 80% of those attacks were password related. You recently heard about Colonial Pipeline and the payment of ransomware. There actually been more than 2,500 cases of ransomware, a 66% increase in 2020, and hackers stole more than $350 million from the companies that we know of that reported that breach and that ransomware pay. Now, we can live in a world with cryptocurrency, or we can live in a world without ransomware, but we can't have both. In October of 2014, in Atlantic magazine, I was asked about Bitcoin. At that time, I said I was very concerned because there would be millions of dollars lost through bad transactions. It would be used to transport money illegally and hide money, and eventually be used in the form of paying ransom. And of course, that's exactly what's happened. And of course, we know that most of these ransomware attacks happen through phishing emails, and phishing emails have really spiked. Now, I've been looking at phishing emails for more than 10 years, thousands of them. And up until a couple of years ago, you could look at them and see poor grammar, misspelling, misdirection. You could easily tell many times that it was a phony email. Not anymore. They're getting extremely sophisticated. So I'd like to share a couple with you. One just happened not long ago. This involved, ironically, a technology company in Southern California with about 4,000 employees. It is supposedly an email from the CEO of the company to the CFO of the company. And the email read, "Good morning, Jeff. Wonderful dinner at your home last night. Please thank your wife, Susan. My wife, Helen, and I truly enjoyed your company. As I mentioned to you over dinner, I'm traveling this week to Nashville, Tennessee to attend a conference. I will not be back in the office till next Monday. I need to wire some funds out this morning that I promised the firm would have by 10 a.m. Will you please take care of that? Here's the instructions, signed John. Well, if you go to Facebook, there is a picture of the CEO and his wife and his children and their names. There's a picture of the CFO, his wife, his name, his children's name. And 2 months earlier, when the CEO registered for that conference in Nashville, Tennessee, he said he was going to that conference and what dates he would be there. They're using social media in real time to take that information and use that to make that email so believable that things happen just minutes away. For example, from one consumer to another. Great having lunch with you today, Barbara. We need to do that again soon. I hope you and your husband, Randy, have a good time at Disney World this week with the kids. When you get back, give me a call and we'll have lunch again. In the meantime, I thought you would enjoy seeing this. Here is the link, signed Joan. Well, she already said she was going to Disney World. She has a picture of her children and her husband and their names. That she said she was going to lunch. Way too much information world, and we tell everybody everything about us. I'm getting on a plane to go to Italy, means you'll be out of pocket for 8 hours, which means that I could wire funds and make up a phony email to do so. I have no way to contact you. We tell people these things and then wonder why people misuse that information against us. You know, phishing is all about psychology, social engineering. When I was 16 years old, I was writing bad checks. It wasn't easy to walk in a bank and cash a check, but one day I was walking down the street and I saw a Pan Am airline crew come out of a hotel. And I thought to myself, if I could get one of those uniforms, then I could go in the bank as a pilot, and I bet they would cash my check. As I walked up the street a little further, I passed the Pan Am building. So the next day I placed a phone call to Pan Am. When the switchboard answered, I asked to speak to someone in the purchasing department. When the clerk came on, I said I was a pilot in New York on a layover. I had sent my uniform out through the hotel to be dry cleaned, and now the hotel and the cleaner said they can't find it. So I needed to get a new uniform. He instructed me that I would probably have to pay for the new uniform. I said no problem, and he told me exactly where to go to get the uniform, and he'd call ahead to make sure they knew I was coming. That's social engineering. Only I was 16 years old and didn't know I was social engineering anyone. And at that time, the only device I had to social engineer anyone was a telephone. Today, there are many forms of communications, texts, emails, the internet, the telephone, and social engineering is one of the greatest tools that criminals have. There is no technology, there never will be any technology to defeat social engineering, including AI. You can only defeat social engineering through education. You have to educate the individual that they are actually being socially engineered. Thank God most people are honest. And because they're honest, they don't have a deceptive mind. So when someone calls the call center and after just a few minutes starts turning the conversation around to where the person in the call center is giving me information rather than gathering my information, they're being socially engineered. But you have to teach people to recognize when they are being socially engineered. You know, I can go into any company in Mexico, the United States, a Fortune 100, a Fortune 500, or just Frank's plumbing shop with 12 employees, and I will find weak spots, soft spots, opportunities for hackers, no matter how big the company is or how small it is. I can go in your home and think about all the things you have in your home: smart doorbells, smart smoke detectors, smart thermostats, smart lights, smart toilets. You have a device that tells you what time of day it is, what's on TV tonight. If you want to order from Amazon, you can talk to it. You have cameras around your house, so if you go away, you can look at your iPhone and see what's going on around your house. All of those devices can be easily manipulated, switched, and I can see everything going on in your house. I can hear everything going on in your house. You see, we develop a lot of technology, both in the business world and in the consumer world, but we fail to go to the final question, and that is, how would someone use this technology in a negative, self-serving way? We are so quick to get it out because of return on investment. The marketing people want it out right away, and we never stop to vet that technology. And consequently, there is a lot of technology out there today that is easily manipulated. We have to do a much better job of building security into our technology. We have to do a much better job of vetting that technology before we ever bring it to the marketplace. And then we have to constantly vet it to make sure that it is constantly being safe. There is no foolproof system. If you believe you have a foolproof system, you have failed to take into consideration the creativity of fools. But you can make something so difficult that it would be like asking someone to move the Empire State Building over 2 blocks in 2 days. And that's what needs to be done every time we create a technology. Passwords. I hate passwords. For years, I've written about passwords. Passwords are for tree houses. They were invented in 1964 when I was 16 years old. And now I'm 73 years old and we are still using passwords. How is that possible when we know for a fact that 63% of network intrusions are a result of compromised user passwords? 81% of hacking-related breaches involve weak or stolen passwords. Colonial Pipeline was a password, a weak, stolen password. Even if we look at the 5 largest banks in America, and we just take one of those banks, they spend on average of $100 million a year resetting passwords at their call center at $70 a reset. $100 million a year. Why are we using passwords? Now, the good news is that we have great technology coming out that's available today that is eliminating the need for passwords. I myself have worked on one of those technologies as an advisor called Trusona, Trusona. And then Microsoft has the same type of technology. The whole purpose is by the next 2 years to eliminate the use of passwords. So if you're watching TV in America, you would see an ad with Sabrina Williams running through a marketplace in her jogging outfit. The only thing in her possession is her cell phone. She goes over to a Chase Bank because she wants to buy a necklace at the market. She takes her phone out, presses the bank's app on her phone. She gets her money, no password, no card. That's technologies like Trusona, which identify you from your device. If they were to call the call center, the bank would only ask that you press the bank's app on your phone and they know who you are. There are no security questions because they already know who you are, which means that the people in the call center have no answer to those security questions, which eliminates a huge risk. If you have an opportunity, please go to the website of Trusona, Trusona, where they have a short video of how it works at an ATM, how it works at a call center, how it works at insurance companies, corporations around the world today, and how they're moving to eliminate passwords. There are about 9 other companies taking with the same type of technology and bringing it to the marketplace. I do predict that next year will be the big push to get rid of passwords, and by the year after, we should have eliminated passwords around the world. That's my hope. The technology's here, it works. Now it's a question of using it. If you don't use it, it's worthless. You know, for years when I wrote about identity theft, I wrote about children identities. And no one thought about that. No one really gave it much thought at all. But I pulled up the study from 2012 done by Carnegie Mellon. It took them 3 years to go to 50 states in the United States to ask more than 40,000 children if they had their identity stolen. This was in 2012. 10% of the children had already had their identity stolen. I remind people all the time, there is no better victim for an identity thief than a child. The younger the child, the better. So if you were selling 2 identities on the dark web and one of them was a 62-year-old multi-millionaire that owned shopping malls, office complexes, you had all of his data. And the other person was a 13-year-old boy in school, they'll take the 13-year-old boy because the 13-year-old boy has no credit. And for the next several years, the 13-year-old boy is not going to use his credit or his identity. And if I can get the information of an infant coming out of a hospital, I might be able to use that infant's identity for 18, 20 years before anyone will ever know I stole that identity. Now, for years, I wrote about my concern about children's identity theft. I'm happy to say that the Wall Street Journal and other magazines have finally come to realize that that is a very, very serious problem. As I mentioned earlier, I wrote about identity theft in the 80s because it was a crime. Only back then it took a lot of research. You had to go out and look at a lot of public records. You had to make a lot of stops, a lot of time, a lot of energy. You had to look up death certificates to get a birth certificate, to get a driver's license, to get a passport. All of that had to be put together. Those days are long gone. We live in a way too much information world, and we have the internet today. So that identity thief today is sitting in his kitchen with a laptop, a cup of coffee, in his pajamas in Russia, and stealing data and selling data thousands of miles away. It's that simple and that fast today. I'm not on social media. I am not on any type of social media. I have never been on social media. I'm not on LinkedIn, or Twitter, or Facebook. I've been out to Facebook corporate offices to speak to their security and privacy team a number of times, but I am not on social media. I believe that probably not in my lifetime, but one day we'll wake up and realize that social media was a very bad experiment. In the meantime, we have to live with it. I remind people in the United States that if you tell me on Facebook where you were born and your date of birth, that's 98% of me stealing your information. All the rest is easy. Those are the keys. Identity thieves use keys. You just gave them 98% of the keys. But we tell them much more than that. We tell them everything about us. And consequently, we wonder why people steal our identity. Facial recognition software developed by MIT years ago called PitPat has come a long way today, where I can hold up a phone in an airport, take a picture of you, and through facial recognition technology, go to your social media page. And the more pictures you have of yourself, the quicker I'll get there. And then anything you have on your social media page, I'm going to know about. The Russians have a similar tool. They called it Find a Face, does basically the same thing. Those facial recognition tools are getting better and better all the time. Apps. We have way too many apps on our phone. We put them on our phone most of the time because they're free. And we think, well, if it doesn't cost anything, I'll put it on my phone. So a couple of years ago, we had the Face app. Free, all you had to do is scroll down and sign the agreement. And of course, then you could send a picture of you at 20 and they tell you what you'd look like at 40, what you'd look like at 60. 80 million Americans signed up for that app. It was free. They scrolled down, didn't read the agreement, just signed off okay and picked it up. And eventually that 80 million people now, biometrics are in the hands of the Russians. It said in the agreement, had they stopped to read it, FaceApp terms and conditions grant the company based in Russia a perpetual, irrevocable, non-exclusive, royalty-free, worldwide, fully paid, transferable license to use, reproduce, modify, adapt, publish, and display your image. And now the Russians know what that person looks like today, what they'll look like 20 years from now, 30 years from now. When the app is free, there's a reason for it. Whether it's a marketing tool, somebody is doing something with it. We have to be a little smarter about what kind of apps we put on our phone, because most of the time they cause us more harm than they cause us any good. And of course, social media. 70% of employers in the United States say they look at people's social media site before they make a decision whether to hire them or not. 54% of them make that decision simply on what they saw or what they was posted on that social media site. So I tell someone, if you're applying for a job with the government and there's a picture of you nude on the beach with a bunch of drug paraphernalia all over your body, no, they're probably not going to hire you. If you say a racial slur because you're 12 years old and you don't know any better, your employer will see it when you're 22 years old. And of course, if you say something about someone's sexual orientation because you're 14 and don't know any better, your school of admissions or your employer may read that 10, 15 years later. Remember, once you post it, once you state it, you can close your account, you can delete it, you can erase it, but it is always there, always retrievable. As we're finding out now, even things that went on with the vaccine and Russia and China are now being collected from the cloud. It is always there. So I always remind young people, before you post, before you make a statement, ask yourself, would you want your employer, your future wife, whoever it may be, to see that? Every day, Facebook gets 2.7 billion hits. I like this car, I like this hotel, I like this airline. They take those hits, put them together and privatize them, and within 6 months they know your gender, your age, your sexual orientation, your voting record, your IQ, your religion, your politics, whether you smoke, whether you use drugs, whether you use alcohol. Again, why would you want anyone to know all those things about you? So we complain constantly about people stealing our identities, and yet we constantly keep providing them more and more information about us. Years ago, criminals sat in front of a screen and looked at this, called a chat room. It was a scroll that went by selling information: mother's maiden name, bank account number, driver's license number, date of birth, credit card number, social security number, a card ID number, security code on the back of your card. And you had only a moment to buy the information as it scrolled by, selling each item for $5 to $10, $15. Today, that's long gone, replaced by the dark web. I call it the ocean of the dark web, because like the ocean, it has different layers. And when you get down to the very bottom of the ocean, that 1% is information that no one will ever see except criminals who use that information against us. So dark web is just another way of collecting and selling information. You know, even the devices we have in our home or our office, like our copier or our fax machine, when we get rid of it, do we ever think about removing the hard drive from the device? Many companies have a contract with a copier company, and when they get to so many copies, they come in and change out the machine under their contract. But has the security officer removed the hard drive from that device? Because if you don't, it'll be refurbished, shrink wrapped, and sold. Many times criminals buy these machines from wholesalers legitimately, simply to throw the machine away and take the hard drive out. Once they plug the cable into the hard drive and back into their PC, they download every single thing that's ever been copied on that machine: loan applications, mortgage applications, driver's licenses, passports, you name it. Now, I'd be remiss if I left this subject without telling you how to protect yourself from having your identity stolen. And I would ask you to do nothing more than I do myself. First of all, I shred everything, because what you believe to be worthless is of great value to someone else. So there are 3 shredders built in the world, 3 types. Many manufacturers, Office Depot, Staples, Fellows, but only 3 types. And on the box next to type is the name of that shredder. There's a straight shredder, sometimes referred to as a ribbon shredder, cuts paper up and down. That can be put back together again in less than 30 minutes. So that is a waste of time, energy, and money. It does not serve your purpose to destroy that piece of paper. Many of you use a crisscross shredder, much better, cuts paper down to a little rectangular box about so. But they use a software called ePuzzler that allows them to put that back together in a very short period of time. So when you go out to buy a shredder, again, it's not who manufactured it, it's what type. And you're looking for the words security, micro, cut shredder. That's a shredder that turns paper into a piece of rice, which is impossible to put back together with today's technology. So if your purpose is to destroy it so it can never be used, and so no one can ever see it, anything on it, then use the right tool to do the right job, especially if you're protecting information belonging to your clients and your customers. Now, in the United States, they used to allow you to freeze your credit, but only 9 states allowed you to do that. All the rest of the states required that you pay a fee to the credit bureau. That's Equifax, Experian, TransUnion in the United States. And the fee was $10 to freeze it, $15 to unfreeze it, $10 to freeze it back again, multiplied by 3. It was costly, and for seniors, it was complicated. So the federal government in the United States passed a law 2 years ago that prohibits credit bureaus from charging you a fee to freeze your credit. Now everyone in the United States can freeze their credit if they are 16 years of age or older. Once you freeze your credit, nobody can see it. It is simple as going to the Google box and typing in, "How do I freeze my credit?" Once it's frozen, no one can see it. If I want to buy a car this weekend, and I go to the car dealer and I want to finance it through the bank and get the best rate, the car dealer, I unfreeze my credit to the dealer, they get me the best rate, and my credit is frozen back again. And of course, we still have credit monitoring services in the United States, and you have FICO and other services in Mexico. Even though I froze my credit a couple of years ago, I still use a credit monitoring service, and I have since the year 2000. And the reason is, I believe that you take responsibility for yourself. So I like to be proactive. So I think they charge me about $14 a month, but I'm able to go on my computer 50 times a day and look at my credit. And up on my screen pops all 3 credit bureaus, Equifax, Experian, TransUnion. At the top is my credit score for that moment of the day in real time. I can scroll down to my credit to make sure everything is accurate. Maybe I paid a car loan off last year, but it still shows the payment outstanding. And at the bottom, I can see all the inquiries made against my credit, inquiries by my bank, inquiries by the government, inquiries by my insurance company. And if I see something suspicious, I can do something about it. And part of that fee, they're monitoring my credit, and they're letting me know if anybody's using my information or data to open a bank account in my name, get information in my name, transfer money in my name, etc. So for that fee, it's worth it. And we are still writing a lot of checks in the United States, both business and personal. I remind people every time you write a check, remember what's on the check: your name and address, your bank's name and address, your account number at your bank, your routing number into your account, the signature you have on the signature card at the bank, and then if the person accepting the check has written down your information and personal security information, driver's license, date of birth, that piece of paper has a great deal of information on it, and that's how they do what we call account takeover or wire money out of your account. Debit versus credit. I don't own a debit card. I've never owned a debit card. I have 3 grown sons married with children, and they don't have a debit card. A long time ago, I asked myself a simple question: what is the safest form of payment in the United States? And the answer was credit card. Not credit debit card, credit card. Visa, MasterCard, American Express, Discover Card. Every day of my life, I spend the credit card company's money. My money is never at risk because it's in a bank. No one knows where it is because it's never exposed to anyone. I go to the grocery store, I use my credit card. I go to the ticket counter, I use my credit card. I go to the hotel, use my credit card. Get dry cleaning, I use my credit card. Now, I will do everything in the world to protect my number, but if someone should get it and tomorrow charge $1 million on my credit card, by federal US law, my liability is zero. I love to shop online, but if I bought an expensive camera and it came broken and they refused to fix it or take it back, my credit card company protects me. If I went to a fictitious site and was defrauded, my credit card company protects me. And when I pay the bill every month, whether I pay in full or I pay the minimum due, my credit score goes up. I build credit. When you use your debit card, you could use it 20 times a day for 20 years and your credit score won't move that much. So in every breach of a retailer in the United States, in the post-investigation after the breach, the customer said, I had a bank Visa card, so all I know is they canceled my card, and 2 days later, they delivered a new card. That's all I know. The person who had a debit card said, no, they got in my bank account and stole $3,000. The bank said they had to investigate. It took 2 or 3 months to get my money. I didn't have access to my money. People ask me how I get cash. I ask my bank only for an ATM card, not an ATM debit card, just an ATM card. And that way I can get cash anywhere in the world, but I'm still protected by the laws that protect my credit card. And if I had an ATM debit card, I would drop the debit side down to just $1, so my risk is no greater than that dollar. And if I used any of those services like Venmo and Zelle and all of those things, I would back that with a credit card, not a debit card. For the last 5 years, I've worked on retainer as a consultant to AARP. That is the largest organization in the world, 38 million members. And these members are 50 and older in most cases. And there are so many crimes against seniors and the elderly that it has been a great opportunity to spend 5 years of my life working with AARP. Each year in America, $37 billion is stolen from retirees, people who lose their home, their pension, their life saving and go penniless, from criminals who defraud them from all over the world. Every day in the United States, 10,000 Americans turn 65 years old. Every day, 7 days a week. During the pandemic, these types of scams went up more than 350%. Romance scams almost doubled. Knowing that education was so important, AARP asked me to write a book published by Random House. The book is AARP's book, so I was just commissioned to write it. All the royalties and the advance for the book go to AARP and the good work they do. But when they asked me to write the book, they asked me to cover every scam there was, every type of scam, millennial scams, scams against seniors, Bitcoin scams, cryptocurrency scams, investment scams, real estate scams, banking scams. And this 400-page book, that's exactly what I did. I covered every scam in Scam Me If You Can. I explain how the scam works. I explain how not to fall victim to the scam. When I finished all my research and finished writing the book, 3 things came to mind. 1, millennials are scammed more often than seniors, but seniors lose more money because they have more money to lose. And I realized after I finished the book that no matter how sophisticated the scam was, no matter how amateur the scam was, there were 2 red flags. And no scam without work, without one of those red flags popping up. The first red flag is at some point I'm going to ask you for money, and that has to be paid immediately. Give me your bank account over the phone. Give me your credit card number over the phone. Stay on the phone with me and go down to Walmart, get a green dot card and read the number on the back of the card to me. Everything has to be immediate. You didn't solicit that call. You have no idea who sent you that email. They're asking you to send money immediately. You need to stop and verify. And the second red flag is at some point I'm going to ask you for information. What's your bank account number? What's your social security number? What's your date of birth? Again, you don't know who's on the other end of that device. You didn't solicit that call. And when that happens, you need to see that red flag. And that's when you need to stop and verify before you ever part with any money or any information. This is why education is such a powerful tool. If you go to my website at abagnale.com, I don't sell anything on my website. I don't promote anything on my website. It is strictly an educational site. So in the Frank Abagnale interview articles, you will see articles I've done with Forbes magazine, the Wall Street Journal, Wired, where they're all Q&A. They've asked me questions pertaining to cyber, and there's my responses. You will also find on my homepage 4 3-minute public service ads I did for a bank in Canada last year that explains all of these scams over 3 minutes. The grandparent scam, the sweepstakes scam, the IRS scam, all of those scams. If you have a senior in your family or an elderly person, have them watch that 3-minute scam PSA, public service ad, so they're not scammed. And of course, The Art of the Steal is one of my books, and where I talk just about check forgery. When I started teaching at the FBI Academy, mainly there was no cybercrime. There were very few computers, and mainly we were talking about things like forgeries and embezzlement and counterfeiting. But still today, check forgery in the United States is a $20 billion a year business. And still big corporations write checks to settle big settlements, etc. So we still have checks. In the old days, when we printed a check, it was on a high security check paper, and it was printed with an impact printer, which meant the ink was embedded in the paper. Today, we laser print checks on a laser printer, which is a non-impact printer. Here we have a check from Forbes magazine in New York. I've blocked the name of their bank and their account number to protect them. It's a green basket weave check paper. This check paper is sold in any office supply store. Forbes sent this refund out for $333.33. The person who received it laid it on their scanner, scanned it up on their computer, deleted the amount in the amount box, deleted the written legal amount, matched the font style. Remember that now it can match more than 2,500 font styles. They matched the font style and they reprinted in a new amount and then reprinted out the check on a color printer, and they had $30,333.33. And even though they deposited in the bank with a 10-day hold, the check cleared. But 62 days later, an auditor caught it. Too late, the forger was long gone. To Forbes magazine's credit, the editor felt all of their readers needed to know what happened because it could happen to them. Because checks are laser printed, that is toner sitting on paper. It is not in the paper, it's on the paper. So forgers take simple Scotch tape, rub it over the amount or the dollar amount or the payee, and lift the Scotch tape, and the toner comes off on the tape. They could pick it off with a pick or a dental pick or a scalpel, but that's time consuming and sometimes can smear or look poor. Some use so-called impact printers today. That's a ribbon with ink in it, a cloth ribbon. But there are many companies that, for saving a little bit of money, they use plastic ribbons, nylon ribbons, and carbon ribbons, and those are erasable. In the old days, if I were to forge a check, I needed a very expensive printing press, as shown in the movie Catch Me If You Can. It took a long time to learn how to operate that press. There were color separations, there were negatives, there were plates, there were typesetting, and there were chemicals to make plates. Today, forgers can make those checks by simply opening their laptop, bringing up a diagram of a very sophisticated check with an empty background, then take that and fill it in by going to the company's corporate website and capturing their corporate logo in color, putting it up on the top of the check, capturing the bank's logo, putting it at the bottom of the check, putting in all the information on the check. And then when they're done in about 15 minutes, on their screen is a beautiful 4-color check. All they have to do is print it out on their inkjet printer. And they can buy check paper, even with security features, at most office supply stores. But in the old days, even though I printed a beautiful check, 4-color, gorgeous looking, someone might have said to me, "How do you know where this company banks?" My answer would have been, "I don't know. So I'm making up a bank's name." "Well, how do you know their account number?" "I don't know. I'm making up a number." "Well, how do you know who the authorized signer is?" "I don't know. I'm just making up a name." The difference today is we live in a too much information world. So the forger calls the company on the check, and when they answer, they ask to speak to someone in accounts receivable. When the clerk comes on, they simply say, "I'm getting ready to wire you some funds and need your wiring instructions." They tell them where they bank, on what street, in what city, account number, routing number, everything they need to put on the check. Then they ask for corporate communications and get a copy of their annual report. And on page 3 is the signature of the chairman of the board, the CFO, the treasurer, the controller, white glossy paper, black ink, camera ready art. All the printing equipment he needs goes in his backpack, cost him less than $5,000. And today, most checks are only chemically sensitive to acetone, so forgers, to know, use more than 25 variations of chemicals to alter checks. For example, these 2 checks are sitting in Q-Tex nail polish remover. The check at the top is written with a Mont Blanc rollerball, the one at the bottom with a cross ballpoint. They are sitting in nothing but a bottle of Q-Tex nail polish remover, which is 99% acetone. 15 minutes later, we shake the pan. 15 minutes later, we remove the check, completely washed. If we had put Scotch tape over the signature front and back, it would have preserved the signature and we'd have had the rest of the check blank. Now, I like simple solutions to serious problems. I don't like people to have to go out and spend $2,000 or $3,000 on software or come up with a solution. So I like it more to be like $2. This is called the Uniball 207. It's sold anywhere, drugstores, Walmart, Target, you name it. And for $2, it's a pen that basically, when you use it, it can never be removed. It is a permanent ink. It's a very smooth writing pen. It does take a refill, but you can throw it away. It's only $2 or less. But when you write with it, what you write stays permanent. Whether you're initialing a contract, signing a check, writing out a check, it stays permanent. A simple solution to a serious problem. And of course, I like simple solutions. So 25 years ago, I worked with Check Free in Atlanta to help develop what is known today as Positive Pay. Positive Pay is very simple software. It's been great for 25 years. When a company issues checks, they download all the checks they wrote to their bank, check number, dollar amount. The check gets that information, the checks go out in the mail. Lo and behold, the forged check shows up. Wish they were all pink, but they're not. The forged check goes back to the first bank, depository bank, and then back to the pay bank and rejected. I already sent the bank a list and said, here's all the checks I wrote today. Here's the check number, here's the dollar amount. When that check comes in, if the dollar amount's not correct, check number is wrong, the check is rejected. There is reverse positive pay as well. Even the payee is protected. If I try to change the payee name by adding a line above the payee's name, like Frank Abagnale and or Robert Johnson Company, that'll be rejected, because when that list was sent to the bank, I sent the check number, the dollar amount, and who I made the check out to. This is referred to as positive pay. It is also used in ACH so that we can confirm each ACH. So technology exists today that is very helpful, but you have to use it. And today there's no reason not to have security built in your check. It used to be a cost factor and companies didn't want to spend extra money to put security in their checks. But today, even companies like Intuit have very secure checks available to even a small flower shop that are just about the same price as checks with no security features. And so there is no excuse today not taking the necessary steps to protect the document or protect yourself and your business by being a little smarter, a little wiser consumer. So this check I can verify by simply rubbing my thumb over the padlock on the left or right side. If it disappears and comes right back, it's authentic. That's called thermochromatic ink. If I try to make a color copy of that check will end up with a void across the entire check or across the signature of the controller or the CFO or the signer of the check. And if I were to put it in any of those 25 chemicals, it'll destroy the check instantly. Everything will be gone. And if I try to take the toner off the check that was laser printed, it is coated with a coating called toner lock that keeps the toner on the paper. I can scrape it, I can pick at it, but it won't come off. So there is no excuse today not to be using the right tools to do the right job. Finally, I remind every company that the most important job you have, whether you're the CEO or you're the janitor, is keeping the information entrusted to you by your clients safe. Here is my information and my website. Please visit it. There is a lot of great information on there. And I will now return and open up for all of your questions.